But the aged care minister is a person that I have spoken of many times, and I know that she loves blocking all sorts of criticism and any criticism that she receives on her Facebook page, and she thinks she is on her line to one day being a lot more than she currently is, which is the sports minister, where she flies around the country, for free on the taxpayer dollar. She gets the seats to all the big games, but she's also the aged care minister. This is a person who loves social media and loves sort of the girl boss and turning herself into a celebrity of Australian politics. Remember, she explained the federal budget through the lens of Married at First Sight. Well, as I say, she has responsibility for aged care. And while she is not specifically responsible for what happens at each and every aged care centre, can we read from the Daily Telegraph today that St Jude's Healthcare Services has had its homes sanctioned. An Australian aged care home where elderly people, reportedly feeling embarrassed by the smell and not treated with respect, has failed to meet any of the industry's quality standards. It's been slapped with a sanction, which means it can't take any more residents, i.e. it can't grow its business for the next few months. The aged care watchdog has found that the home, and a specific home in an affluent suburb of Perth, which is operated by St Jude's Healthcare Services, had incidents involving the possible abuse or neglect. The watchdog had a look at this place in December. It followed with a look in January, and most, if not all, of the conditions were failed to be met. As you can see there, of the 42, there were 38 where they fell short. Perhaps a little less time on the TikTok and a little more time on following up, but at least the system has been able to catch what has been going on there, and the families deserve better, let alone, of course, the residents, who absolutely deserve much better than what seemingly they have been getting. All right, politics here. Now, it begins. The demands on a Prime Minister who is still basking in the glow of that record election win. It doesn't just set him up in Labor Party history, but Australian political history as one of the most successful leaders of the Labor Party. Now, one of the reasons I think they were able to get there was because the media was more than fine with them not telling us what the 2035 climate targets would be. You see, the 2030 targets caused big trouble for Bill Shorten in 2019. They had to pretend it was $275 and hundreds of thousands of jobs to get through the 2022 election. So they thought, bugger it, let's not deal with it at all. But the reality is, in terms of the left of Australian politics, the law that has already been passed for Australia to cut 43% of 1% of the world's emissions is not enough. And while those numbers of net zero are 2050 and 43% of 1% is 2030, Australia, of course, wants to host one of these climate conferences, meaning all pressure will be on the Australian government to up the number from where it currently is. Now, we know what the consequences of that when it comes to energy, and we all know what the consequences will be for things like industrial farming. But the election did not include this as a debate, a failure of the opposition to do so, but then again, it itself was not willing to say what its targets would be for 2035, so everyone just put it in the too hard basket. But instead of having the opportunity to have a debate and then have a vote on it, by not having any conversation, the number will simply just be set. And with the numbers as they currently are in the House, a monster majority, and now the Labor Party growing the number of senators it has, will only need the Greens to pass any increase in those targets. So we read today that Labor Party MPs, along with activists in the party, are now suggesting that the current rate of 43% of 1% of the world's emissions to be cut by 2030 should become 70% of 1% of the world's emissions just 5 years later in 2035. Now, the Teals, they too have argued for this before. You see, they have argued that it should be 75%. So this would have been one of those negotiating tactics should there been a minority government, but now that that's not needed, it's the backbench and the membership that are demanding it. And today, via The Australian, we learned that Labor's environmental wing is pushing Anthony Albanese to adopt 70+% emissions reduction targets for 2035. With the nature of the parliament as it is, all of this would be law, there would be no debate, there would be no turning back. And they say in part this should be because of a reward. Why? Because they re-elected Labor MPs and they didn't talk when the government was approving gas in the past few years. The group of 5,000 members poured resources into helping people win environment vote or the environment vote in places like Bennelong, Sydney, Macnamara and Melbourne, as well as Griffith. And the party activist says that the big majority win on Saturday was an opportunity for the government to undertake major reforms to protect the natural environment. Among other things, she says nature positive should come back, even though the Prime Minister pretended that was going away. We told you it was coming back. And Ms Wade has also said that there should be at least 70% emissions cut to 1% of the world's problem by 2025. Just to give you an idea of how far left the membership of the Labor Party has gone, and thus many of the unions who support it, or the members who make up the backbench and even the cabinet, the idea of 70% reduction by 2030 or 2035 is exactly the policy of the Greens from the 2020 year. So straight after the 2019 election, the now gone Adam Bandt was saying 75%. Labor now, a few years later, says 70%. Put simply, while the Greens may well be diminished, and I'll get to that in a second, the things that they have believed in and argued for are now front and centre. And people who helped get the government a major majority on Saturday are now saying, time to pay up. And because we never had a debate about what percentage should be the appropriate percentage at this last election, then guess what's going to happen? Major changes. Currently 43%. Even if it became 53, 63%, let alone 70%, that is dramatic changes to the way that our country works. But it was all the too hard basket for the past 3 months. As for Adam Bandt, well, he's gone. You will have heard by now that the formal call's been made by the Sky News Decision Desk. Multiple other media organisations are suggesting there is no way for the bad DJ from Melbourne to be able to find a way to hold on to his seat. Here is Tom Connell making that announcement and explaining his logic as to why there's no chance for the boy in green.
We're assuming lots of positives for Bandt from here, and he still would need 63%. So given that, I know there's plenty of vote left, we are now saying the Labor Party will pick up the seat of Melbourne, and Adam Bandt, the Greens leader, will lose the seat of Melbourne.
Now, for those that are saying, ding dong, the Greens are dead, while I would love it to be the case, as Mark Twain famously said, or probably was just attributed to him, the reports of his death were very much exaggerated. Well, you have to say that about the Greens. Yes, most likely they will end up with maximum 1 seats in the lower house. All of the remaining seats that they had 4, 3 of them will go to Labor. 1 probably will hold on, and that'll be in the seat of Ryan, in and around sort of the area of Toowong in Brisbane. But the reality is the Greens aren't dead. In fact, they become even more powerful after this election. Why? Because they're going to have 11 members of the Senate. Those 11 members in the Senate, plus the performance of the Labor Party at this election, means they don't need Jackie Lambie anymore. They don't need doormat Dave Pocock. They don't need Tammy Tyrrell. They don't need anyone else apart from the Greens to pass anything. Now, obviously, if the coalition get together with the Greens, that's a mega majority. But every piece of legislation now goes through the door of the Greens. So while I would love to say, ding dong, the Bandt is gone and all the rest of it, reality is for a bill to become a law in Australia, if the coalition opposes it, the Greens are going to be required.